The woman had only paused in front of the shop window for a few seconds before a strange man nearby started staring at her. She gave the man a polite nod, then quickly turned to leave. But on the way, she suddenly realized that the man was actually following her. She began to walk faster, but the man kept close behind. Not caring about the danger of the traffic, she hurriedly crossed the street to the other side. She thought she had shaken him off, but when she turned around, she found the man was right behind her.
靴同じ。
え？
靴同じですね。
違いますよ。
She felt that the man seemed to have some mental issues and she just wanted to get away from there as quickly as possible. But the man wouldn't give up and blocked her path, then said to her,
本当は今涼しい場所で冷たいものでも一緒に飲んだ方がいいと思う。飲みたいんですけど、でも僕もお金がないので、おごれないので諦めます。
Maybe she felt sorry for the man's down-and-out appearance, or maybe she was attracted by his handsome looks. Saki went to a cafe with the man, and even paid out of her own pocket to buy him a drink. The man introduced himself as Nagata, a playwright at a theater. Nagata had a decadent and lazy air about him, and during their conversation, he always managed to say something novel. He looked like a melancholic artist, and Saki gradually developed a fondness for him. They talked from the afternoon into the evening, and before parting, they exchanged contact information. What Saki didn't know was that meeting Nagata would turn her life into a nightmare. Nagata was indeed a playwright, but he was a failed one. In pursuit of his dream, Nagata and a friend had come to Tokyo from the countryside, believing himself to be a genius. However, it seemed that audiences couldn't see his talent. The scripts he worked so hard to create only received 1-star reviews after being performed. The night before he met Saki, Nagata had gotten into an argument with his colleagues at the theater. His play had flopped, and his co-workers urged him to revise the script based on the audience's feedback. But Nagata thought his script was interesting and argued back, insisting that the real problem must be with the audience. If the audience didn't like the play, it was because they had no taste. If they didn't enjoy it, it was because their standards weren't high enough. He felt his talent was being insulted, so he started lashing out at the female colleague in front of him, mocking her appearance, and saying that even though she wasn't pretty, she still thought highly of herself. After the argument, Nagata went home alone. But halfway home, his colleague caught up with him. She ambushed him with an umbrella, and while he was knocked to the ground, she kept hitting him with it. Nagata was never able to make any money and always lived in poverty. He spent all his time writing scripts, but his hard work never brought him any reward. His life was constantly filled with anxiety and unease, and he had no idea how long it would go on like this. Until one day, while wandering the streets, he met Saki. When Saki smiled at him, he began to see that smile as a lifeline. After spending a short time with Saki, he suddenly realized that her warm smile could ease his anxiety and unease. So after that, Nagata started to take the initiative to ask Saki out. Saki was very beautiful, and during their dates, she was often approached by other men, but strangely enough, Nagata always stood far off to the side. Maybe to be considerate of Nagata's feelings, Saki would say that he wouldn't accept anyone else's advances anymore. However, Nagata would say it was fine, explaining that he just didn't like talking to strangers. During their dates, Nagata gradually learned everything about Saki. He found out that Saki was a college student about to graduate, and, like him, came from a remote rural area. He discovered that Saki was cheerful and outgoing. Even just going for a walk, she would happily skip along. After that date, Nagata wrote a script about an optimistic girl. Using Saki as the inspiration, she showed the script to her good friend, an actress, who praised it as the best script Nagata had ever written. Nagata invited Saki to play the lead role in the script, and Saki happily agreed because her dream was to become an actress, and coming to Tokyo was all about pursuing that dream. During rehearsals, Saki carefully studied the script, meticulously working on every detail of the character's actions. Saki was very dedicated and professional. Everyone in the theater was impressed by Saki's talent, and thanks to her participation, Nagata's script was recognized by the audience for the first time. However, at the cast party, Nagata wasn't very happy because everyone was praising Saki and felt that she was the one who had saved the theater. So Nagata took the play down and on her own put up those shows that had never been popular in the first place. Unable to pay his rent, Nagata moved into Saki's place. They started living together and officially became a couple. The play that Saki performed in brought Nagata a lot of popularity, and he gradually gained female fans. Whenever a female fan asked to meet him, he would accept without any sense of guilt. And every time he betrayed Saki, he would give her a brick. Each time, Saki would burst out laughing at this strange yet artistic gesture. Deep down, Nagata knew that Saki trusted and indulged him completely, without reservation. But Saki's love and indulgence only made Nagata's guilt grow stronger and stronger. Finally, one night, he gave Saki a normal gift. It was just an ordinary wallet, but Saki was so moved that she burst into tears. Seeing the pure and wonderful Saki in front of him, Nagata's guilt reached its peak. He began to turn down female fans and stopped betraying Saki. Although life with Saki was warm and comforting, Nagata's theater still showed no signs of improvement. With nothing to do at the theater, he was idle and could only stay at home playing video games. On this day, Saki's mother sent some food from their hometown. As Saki unpacked the delivery, she joked with Nagata, saying, "My mum said she didn't really want to send me food because half of it would end up being eaten by a man she doesn't even know. But she must have been joking, otherwise she wouldn't have sent it." However, Saki's joke ended up wounding Nagata's fragile pride.
俺、サキちゃんのおかん嫌いだわ。
ダメだよ。そんなこと言っちゃ。お母さん悪くないよ。
俺が送る立場だったらそんな嫌味わざわざ言わんけどね。
ごめんね。
Seeing that Nagata was angry, Saki could only apologize while asking Nagata not to insult her mother, but Nagata didn't stop. Stop blaming Saki's mother for looking down on her. In fact, Nagata knew deep down that her anger was completely unreasonable and very childish. She felt she should apologize to Saki, but for some strange reason, she just couldn't bring herself to do it. So she chose to storm out in a huff, using the silent treatment to avoid the conflict she had started. She sat outside for a long time, blaming herself over and over in her mind. She knew she relied on Saki for support in her life, and she was also painfully aware of her own sensitive pride. Even though he understood all of this in theory, it was still extremely difficult for him to actually do it. When he got home, he found an apology letter from Saki. In the letter, Saki blamed herself for not being able to express herself well and asked Nagata to forgive her. Nagata forgave Saki and began to eat the food Saki's mother had sent, feeling at ease about it. After this incident, Nagata became certain that Saki was accommodating him to the greatest extent possible. And this tolerance made him feel even more emboldened in the relationship. Even though he was living at Saki's house, he never paid any rent. Sometimes, when he made money from the theater, he would spend it all on himself. Occasionally, he would buy Saki a book, but when he got home, he would find that Saki had also bought the same book for him. Saki was delighted, because it made her feel like they were truly in sync. But Nagata was very angry. He loudly scolded Saki for wasting money. After venting his anger, he regretted it. He realized that the reason Saki bought the book was to make him happy, and the more he thought about it, the more upset and agitated he became. Because the better and kinder Saki was, the more it highlighted his own ugliness and pettiness. That night, Saki borrowed a motorcycle. The motorcycle was from a male classmate. It was obvious that Saki and that classmate had a good relationship, and Saki enthusiastically shared things with him, but he couldn't help but suspect the nature of Saki's relationship with the classmate. He was both suspicious and jealous, but he didn't dare to voice his feelings, so he just rode off on the motorcycle. He left Saki standing there on the spot.
目を保護しないとダメなんだよ。
He rode his bike around the area, and every time he made a lap, Saki would jump out from a fixed spot to make him laugh. He went around many times, and Saki jumped out from the roadside many times as well. But each time, Nagata never responded to her. After many tries, Saki suddenly got tired, and finally gave up. On Nagata's last lap, he noticed that Saki had already disappeared from the roadside. That night, Nagata waited at home for a long time, and it was very late when Saki finally came back. Nagata asked Saki why she was angry. Saki shot back, asking, "Why do you never stop for me? You left me alone on such a dark street. Did you ever think I might be scared?"
たまに何考えてんのかわからない時があるよ。たまにどう接していいかわからないことがある。
This was the first time Saki got angry at Nagata, and it made Nagata realize that Saki's tolerance for him did have its limits. Nagata was furious. While Saki was asleep, he smashed the motorcycle Saki had borrowed. The next day, he lied to Saki, saying the motorcycle had been damaged in an accident. This incident was a huge blow to Saki, because that bike was treasured by one of her male classmates. Saki started to become afraid of going to school, and gradually became more and more like Nagata. She stayed at home all day just like Nagata, and spent her days playing video games just like Nagata did. Saki began to neglect her studies, and eventually started working outside to cover expenses for both of them. During the day, she worked as a sales assistant in a clothing store, and at night, she was a waitress in a restaurant. Compared to Saki, Nagata seemed to have it much easier. She would always sleep in until the afternoon. Then she would go out and wander aimlessly on the streets, often staying out late before coming home. When she returned, she would act exhausted in front of Saki. Of course, one person's meager income was not enough to support both of them. Saki began to ask Nagata if she could help pay part of the electricity bill.
でも、ここサキちゃんの家やし、人の家の光熱費を払う理由がね、わからん。
確かに、人んちの光熱費払う人とか、いないよね。ウケる。
That day, Nagata went with Nohara to watch someone else's play. He had always thought highly of himself, but this time, he was so moved by someone else's work that he was brought to tears. But when he found out that the playwright was about the same age as him, a surge of jealousy made him feel that the work wasn't all that great after all. He became aware of his own mediocrity and grew afraid that Saki would realize he truly had no talent. He started to fear being with Saki and began staying out frequently, not coming home. This state lasted for a year, and the talent he prided himself on still went unnoticed by audiences. Sometimes he would get very drunk, and every time he got drunk, he would go looking for Saki. In the middle of the night, he would shake Saki awake from deep sleep and unload all his negative emotions onto her. One day, he happened to learn that Saki had never mentioned to her friends that he was a playwright. His fragile self-esteem was wounded once again, and he felt that Saki had always looked down on him.
私が長くんのことバカにするわけないよ。
自分がそう思ってても、悪意がなくても、人を傷つけることってあるから。その了解の範囲がお前は狭いの。
Nagata's accusations made Saki start to doubt and deny herself. Saki began to feel that she was a bad person and wondered if she had unintentionally hurt many people in the past. After that, Nagata began to deliberately ignore Saki, but every time he got drunk, he would come home in the middle of the night and lie down next to Saki. When Saki woke up and tried to talk to him, he would pretend to be asleep, unwilling to respond to her. Nagata's silence and neglect were subtly changing things. Nagata noticed that Saki didn't smile much anymore, and also saw that Saki was drinking every day. Alcohol made Saki numb, but it also gave her the courage to express her dissatisfaction to Nagata.
気づいてないと思うんだけどさ、長くんってね、私のこと褒めたりしてくれたこと一度もないんだよ、わかる？
It was as if Nagata's mask had been torn away, and all he could do was use anger to cover up his guilt. That night, they had a fierce argument, and for the first time, Saki became hysterical. Saki regretted falling in love with Nagata, and she also hated herself for never having the courage to leave him. Saki was no longer cheerful and sunny. The girl Nagata once saw as a ray of light had completely disappeared. Nagata tried to make amends, tried to bring Saki back to how she used to be, but all his efforts were in vain. Saki continued to sink into darkness, remaining as despondent as ever. Saki began to refuse to communicate with Nagata, no longer responding to his care or kindness. Nagata sensed that Saki was drifting away from him, but he was unwilling to let her leave his side. He took the initiative to pick Saki up from work at the restaurant, only to be told that she had left early with the manager. He went to the manager's apartment building and saw Saki inside. Nagata did not ask Saki what she was doing at the manager's place. He simply rode his bicycle in silence, taking Saki home. On the way, Nagata kept reminiscing about their sweet memories, talking to himself while Saki just listened quietly. He took Saki to see the cherry blossoms before dawn and rode with her through empty streets. At that moment, Nagata did not realize that he could no longer win her back. Saki used to love him deeply, so even the smallest bit of kindness from him could make her happy. The Saki from before was very tolerant of her, so even the slightest effort from her would make Saki give her all. But now, Saki has been worn out and exhausted by her. The Saki of today has become increasingly depressed, and even her friends have noticed something is wrong. Nohara, who has known Nagata for many years and understands her character and way of handling things best, also advised Nagata with a grave expression to break up with Saki. You don't really love Saki that much. You're just using her to cover up your own insecurity. Everyone thinks you lack talent, except for her. She's always believed your scripts are good. You're afraid that one day Saki will realize how ordinary you are, so you want to destroy her first. Only after destroying her will she not abandon you because of your mediocrity. The only person you truly love is yourself, which is why you can't let go. Nagata didn't refute Nohara. He knew that everything Nohara said was true. That night, when Nagata returned home, Saki told him about his decision to leave Tokyo. Saki said he felt as if he were ill, that he was no longer suited to live in Tokyo. In reality, both of them knew deep down that Saki wasn't afraid of Tokyo. He was actually afraid of staying by Nagata's side.
一人で大丈夫？
Perhaps because he still retained a final trace of kindness in his heart, Nagata calmly let Saki go. After that night, Saki left Tokyo. She left in such a hurry that she didn't even pack her belongings in the apartment. While tidying up, Nagata found the script from the play Saki had acted in. She had always treasured it. At the end of the script, Saki had written her comments. It was only then that Nagata realized that Saki had never thought he was mediocre. Back then, he always suspected that Saki looked down on him and would lose his temper with her for no reason. He had, whether out of friendship or unintentionally, hurt Saki. Now he finally understood that things could have turned out better. He sat alone in the empty apartment for a a long time until he began to hallucinate. In his imagination, Saki returned from the small town to be with him, and together they started a new life in this little apartment. He turned his story with Saki into a romantic play. He brought the play to the stage with himself as the male lead and Saki as the female lead. In his imagination, their story was very popular. Every performance at his theater was sold out. On stage, he played a considerate boyfriend. In the play, he painted a beautiful future for himself and Shahi. In a daze, he suddenly noticed that Shahi, who had been on stage, had run down and become part of the audience. He was gratified to see that, as a member of the audience, Shahi was moved to tears by his story. However, fantasy is never reality. Perhaps in real life, Shahi was not crying because of their love story. Perhaps what Shahi was crying for was simply the beautiful life that had once been hers, now ruined. Maybe in reality, Nagata's new script still wouldn't attract any audience, his theater would still never be full, and he would continue to achieve nothing, yet live on with an inflated sense of self-importance. Arrogance and inferiority may seem contradictory and opposed, yet they can strangely coexist within the same person. Perhaps everyone harbors an idealized version of themselves in their hearts. We long to become the person we envision, but when we fail to meet our own expectations, we end up resenting ourselves. When these feelings become pathological, we grow broken and base, developing a morbid sense of self-contempt. It can also lead to a pathological contempt for others. For most people, these unhealthy emotions only bring harm. They create a sense of separation between us and those around us, and cause endless mutual depletion in our romantic relationships. But a healthy relationship is never about mutual exhaustion, nor is it about one person being the other's sole salvation. The best kind of love is always about healing each other and growing together. In your partner's eyes, you can see a better version of yourself. And your partner can also find their own sense of belonging in your eyes.